Barbell deadlifts, barbell squats, overhead press, lat pull down, chest press. And when you're ready to stop, repeat. That's how we climb Olympia. When you push that extra rep, when you pull another set, when you lift that one last rep, you will climb the mountain and no one will forget. Bring on the build with the NASM Physique and Bodybuilding Coach Program.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Kenn Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts here with my friend and colleague, Mr. Kenn Miller. Ken, how are you?
Awesome, Wendy. How are you doing? You're looking good?
Oh, I am so good and really excited to talk about today because Ken and I just got back from Belgrade, Serbia, and we wanted to talk to you guys about our experience and the amazing people that we met and just the differences in training that we saw out there. And it was just such an amazing, amazing time.
Yeah, I mean, to say the least. I mean, the travel, well, for me, coming from the west coast of the U.S., flying through Munich into Serbia, the trip was, lengthy, to say the least. But once we landed, I mean, it was one of those things where, Wendy, I saw you at the terminal to receive me right after baggage claim with Svetlana Kokorillo, our sponsor and host for the conference that we were there for. But I thought of no better way to celebrate my birthday than to see the both of you receiving me at the baggage claim. So that was my first birthday gift this year, was seeing both of you at the airport. So that was a great start. But I'll tell you what, the people of Serbia, of Belgrade, those that we had a chance to interact with, was again present enough to be exposed to that culture. Although the reason why we were there was for a fitness conference through the HFS conference, which is basically our Optima International for a conference for the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I'll tell you, that was a great start. Just first of all, meeting one of our partners out there, seeing you guys, wishing me a happy birthday, and then having our first meal in Serbia was awesome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And guys, just so you know, like Ken and I, when we were looking at our travel time, I'm like, oh man, when you land, it's actually your birthday. You're going to be away from your family, away from your friends. And our host, Svetlana, and her amazing husband, Nabosa, they did treat Ken with a birthday cake and a song, and they did take us to dinner. And the dinners, guys, out there were something. I was nervous because I'm going to just be very honest. When I travel internationally, I am a very picky eater. I seem to be allergic to all the things like avocado, citrus, all the things that are in a lot of different foods, especially when you're going overseas. That's, traditional plates are made with a lot of these particular ingredients that I can't have. So I get a little bit nervous, but she's like, no, Wendy, I'm telling you, most of the things we eat here are meat, which I am that meat person. I'm far from a vegetarian, and like vegetables. And so every meal that we had, starting with the first one, which was at a steak, I think it was a steak place that we went to. Yeah. And they ordered for us, which made me even more nervous, but everything they ordered was so good.
I mean, we had a chance to not just get to know Svetlana and her husband Nabosha better, but we also had an opportunity to interact with a couple of the other presenters, Darren Dillon with TRX, who's out of Dublin, Ireland. So he was awesome, great person. Then we had Turk from Turkey, Biakila, who's one of our National Academy of Sports Medicine master trainers that's out there in that region. So he had flown in from, I think he's from Istanbul. Right. He teaches at university. He's a strength performance coach for wrestling and soccer out there, I believe. So very much somebody who uses the OPT model with how he trains and how he educates trainers out there in the region. So we had a great dinner overall with food, but also had an opportunity to talk to other international educators and presenters. So day one started off, actually couldn't have started off any better, just because of who we got to meet with, face to face with Svetlana and Nabosha, because there are our partners, and we trained them virtually a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe. So it's actually great, these days to actually see people face to face. So that alone on the first day was awesome.
Yes. And today on Random Fit, we're talking about being on the road. When we went to Belgrade, Serbia with our partners from HFS Systems, so Health and Fitness Systems. That was our day one. But day two, guys, we were like, all right, today's the beginning of the conference. And they're like, well, actually opening starts at 7 p.m. And so Ken and I are like, what? And they're like, you know what? Be ready at 10 a.m. Meet us downstairs in the lobby, because we're going to take you to see Serbia. And like I said, these hosts were absolutely amazing. We got a chance to see Belgrade Fortress, and what is it? I'm going to butcher it. Is it
Kalemegdolon?
Kalemegdolon, which were, basically where, back in, what was it, 1152, I think, was when some of this was built. And just looking at, just the history, and of course, there was a lot of information about the wars that have just recently happened. And we say recently as of 1995, 96. And the different splits into what are now 6 different countries in relation to being one gigantic USSR. They were amazing. They were being able to tell us all of this stuff about the history, speaking in English, and their English was phenomenal. Looking at some of these churches, and then taking us to lunch for yet a traditional Serbian lunch that I ate more of that meal than I think I probably ate in one sitting the whole time we were there, because they ordered all of these different dishes, and they're like, you must try this and you must try that. And again, all really, really good food, but just them taking the time out of their day before they were doing this grand opening, beginning of Optima International, the inaugural year, their very first Optima. And, they took the time out to make sure that we had an amazing day, even though they had the biggest event on their hands than they've ever done before. I couldn't thank them enough for doing that.
Yeah. And for that, we are very, very, very much grateful. I mean, because, coming from where we are in the US and knowing what little we knew about that region of the world, it was a great educational experience. So I encourage, anybody who's listening to this podcast that, when as Wendy and I are learning, having gone to Germany to present and Dubai to present, and now just recently in Belgrade to present and share what information we have to share when it comes to how we train people using the OPT models. What really helps us understand the needs of the attendees is the fact that, every region of the world is in a different place when it comes to how they've integrated fitness information. So, my thoughts and my realization on this trip, Wendy, was the fact that, for us to really understand what our audience needs when we're presenting live is we just need to better understand culture, right? Yes. And from that standpoint, when I say culture, not just culture of the people, what's their activity like, what's their food intake like? Because here, if in the US, relatively speaking, everybody's in a hurry, right? Yeah. And talking about food, we can have a food episode for Random Fit. But when you think about the quality of the food, you and I were both thinking, how many ways can you prepare paprika? Because
paprika.
Paprika. For us, it's just like, okay, what you put into deviled eggs, right? And that's all that was to me. But then to see them say, okay, that's a cottage cheese with yellow paprika. I'm like, yellow paprika?
It was cream cheese, not even cottage cheese. It was cheese, phenomenal.
Yeah. and then they had another baked paprika with a little garlic in it. which was red, but I had no idea it was what it was. And then, other ways they've prepared it as a spread. I was like, I had no idea. Here we are sitting down, and we've seen it prepared 4 different ways, where before that meal, it was just something you put in deviled eggs, or if you wanted to spice things up a little bit. But back to the point of understanding, being in Belgrade and trying the food and watching the people, and that really gave me some insight on the fact that, okay, we have issues here in the US when it comes to food selection. We're in a hurry, we're stressed out, but then one of the things about food there is that it's you can tell things are prepared with care. There's time and attention, but we had a
Little
traditional
preservatives.
yeah traditional Serbian meal, and it's just, going basically from farm to table is what we called it. And one of the trainers explained to me, is like, we want to have the least amount of steps as far as how the food is handled between when it's pulled out of the ground to when it hits the table. So that's where we said, okay, well, that's what we call farm to table. Where it's like, well, we just want the least amount of hands on this to make sure it's the best quality, most unadulterated version of food that we can have. And I think that was what really makes that initial experience come alive, was the fact that, it just, okay, so there is time and attention to food. There is a little bit less stress, a little hustle and bustle in that region. So when it came to the presentations, we could talk about how trainers can apply assessments and exercise selection to their clientele better, because now we have a better understanding. Okay, what are the physical demands? What are the stresses imposed, for your day-to-day clientele? So that was from day one, full day one. Gave some insight on who we were working with and what trainers really wanted to know.
Yeah. And then, after we had this experience at lunch, we came back, everyone got dressed up. It was a more of a formal type of what they called the opening of Optima. And they had all of the attendees show up. All the presenters were there. They brought in, people that had their federation. And this was I think the president of the Federation for Fitness and Recreation, if I'm not mistaken, as well as entrepreneurs that were more on the business side and financial side, did an opening. His name was Yosha, and he was phenomenal. And they had motivational trainers and speakers that were there. And just the overall event, they made it such an amazing production. And guys, for NASM and, Ken and I having that experience, for them to really understand that brand recognition is very important to us, because that's what we do. I think it's really, I think it's important for us to see that they're taking our content and they really want to apply it. Because as Ken and I started to do some of our sessions, starting on what was then our day 3, we found out that there were so many people that have learned the content, but yet really hadn't experienced some of the information hands-on. And Ken, I don't want to speak on behalf of you, but I got the opportunity, and Ken as well. We spoke on 5 different topics apiece. So there were 10 topics surrounding the NASM Optimum Performance Training Model. And so when we're looking at this OPT model, I was able to do an overview. We got to spend time doing hands-on stuff on the assessments and really trying to show them what we do and how we differentiate, dysfunctional movements from ideal postures and movement patterns, and how we can help our clients feel and move better. And then even in day 1, those were my first 2 sessions. And then I went into talking about the core. I did one on risk versus benefits. So some exercises that some, people do in the gym, and why that might not be the safest for people's positioning and joints, because it could lead to injury, and the rationales behind the whys. And just the amount of people that followed just myself and those sessions, because they were hungry for that information. It re-sparked me as a presenter, because I remember when we started teaching, Ken, 20 years ago, and this information was so new to the people in the States, that it was so important that we spent that quality time with each person, so they understood that this one particular model can save lives like when I say save lives, save people from becoming injured and performing at their highest level and signing contracts that have taken them up to become, the highest in their field. It just was so absolutely rewarding for me.
Yeah, you and me both, from the vantage point that when we talk about the the trip overall, I mean, it's one to get great exposure. So as we're talking here on Random Fit, we're talking about Random Fit on the road with both Wendy Batts and myself, Kenn Miller, and our time in Serbia. So when we discuss what it was to have, as you mentioned, Wendy, we had basically full rooms when we were presenting, and that just was a testament to the fact that they really wanted the information that we had to share, that we've been using. Like you said, Wendy, we've been teaching this stuff for 20 years, using it and teaching it for over 20 years. And for them to have a system that now puts everything together. So you talked about core, you overviewed the programming model and how we strategize getting somebody from A to Z. What was really great to see was that as they were in your workshops and presentations, they would lateral over to mine and back and forth to yours, because as you went through your 5 and my 5, so a total of 10, different perspectives on the use and application of the optimum performance training model. It's our hope as we do this, with different conferences, that people can take your information and my information and kind of stitch it together and have a better idea of use and application, which is, I mean, it takes people years of studying the NASM OPT model to really now truly be comfortable and competent at it. So within 2 days, that's a lot of information to absorb. And that's where, I think if you've been getting as many direct messages and emails as I have, they're staying in touch. I mean, here we are a week home now. They're staying in touch and trying to figure out, okay, well, I used it, I tried it. Now here's my questions on it. And that is the most, encouraging thing about the trip, is the fact that they just didn't go to a conference, right? They were hungry and searching and now applying the information, which is the best thing any presenter can ever hear, is the fact that you learned something that I had to say, you absorbed it, and now you're actually using it, right? Even if it's one thing out of 5 hours that you've had a chance to listen to me yap for the workshop, but you're actually using it. And that was the best thing ever, when, staying in touch with some of these people.
Yeah. And I mean, and overall, when we were talking about this conference, again, it was the inaugural inaugural year of the NASM, like the Optima International. And so again, we hold that very close to our hearts. And so we didn't know how this was going to go. And the way that they, HFS set this up, it was very top notch. I don't think they left a detail out. I mean, one of the things that I personally I couldn't thank them enough for even thinking about, because I didn't know that this was available. When I presented with other, individuals that did not speak English, and we had to go and present, Kenn, you and I have done this multiple times. When you're on stage and you're talking, I'm very passionate about it when I'm on stage. I love talking about the information. I love talking about the content, because I know that it works. And that's why I use this particular system and why I always have. But when you're in the middle of presenting and you get 2 or 3 sentences in and you have to stop, have a translator try to still get my point across, but I have to also stop and wait for them to finish the translation and then continue on to my train of thought. It's not always easy to do. And it really is a science that you've got to practice on. Well, one of the things that I loved about this particular conference, and one of the things that they did, was they had translators in the back, in the corner, that were, plexiglass. So we couldn't hear them on stage, but they could hear us very well through the mic. And they were translating English into Serbian just through headphones. So if someone did not speak English, which most people did, but if they felt more comfortable learning in in Serbian, then they could listen to these headphones and hear the translation while I was presenting. So it was like literally almost word for word. They were seeing my emotions. They were seeing my demonstrations, when we would bring people up, they were listening to what I was doing right at that moment without having to pause. So on an instructional standpoint, I was able to cover more content because I didn't have to stop and wait for that translation to happen. And I think that was one of the things that I particularly was very appreciative of, because I think it was really good for the audience, but it was also good for me as a presenter. And I know, Ken, you felt the exact same way, because if we wanted to go into someone else's, we could actually have it in English. So while they were speaking in Serbian, the translators were translating in English. And so we also got to be a part of it. And there was no language barrier whatsoever.
Right. And that was huge. But, you know, something I kept saying, it's like, your English is better than my Serbian. So, so when it came to communicating, the fact that, you know, they know English, they understand English enough to understand a technical, you know, a fitness based conference in, you know, in language that's not of that region, you know, that impresses me everywhere we go, when, you know, when they can actually listen to us. But the fact that, you know, Svetlana and Nebosha, they left no stone unturned when it came to how they promoted, how they executed. Their staff was great. You know, everybody who had a role, it was seamless as a presenter. It was one of those things, like, I was never in need of anything. They were always preemptively making sure that I had what I needed to present. And, you know, it was so seamless. So for the 2 days that we were there and the information that we had to download, the fact that, you know, there was such passion in the field, in the audience for what we had to speak of, all the way from reviewing our training model, looking at basic components of the model, like with core. And then, you know, I had a perspective on corrective exercise in the shoulder, working with rotational athletes, you know, different aspects of how we might use the model for more practical application. So the 2 days were great. You know, it was really a tough thing to say goodbye, because it was
I know.
There was so much more to see. So, you know, I don't know, Wendy, if you were approached by some of the trainers asking, okay, how long are you going to be in town? Can you come to my facility, or would you like to see my facility? So there were a couple invitations like that. So leaving, you know, the day after we're done presenting is always tough, because now you really realize, like, oh, this gym is over here, and this trainer is training over here. And, you know, wanting to see how trainers train and the environments that they work in is definitely something I like to get a little bit more of in future trips. But overall, it's, you know, they're just so excited to, you know, to try things out and to apply this information. So that's really encouraging, and that's what really charges my batteries when it comes to, okay, well, what can we do next? Who can we help, you know, at the next event?
And, you know, one other comment that I found fascinating, and I think sometimes when we live in the States, we take it for granted, but, you know, gyms out there are nothing like the gyms that we have access to here in the States. And they really are trying to grow the fitness industry out there, because, you know, there's not a lot of people that can afford some gym memberships. So they're working on, you know, being cost effective to try to get everyone in to change their lifestyles and their journeys when it comes to health and fitness. And so, you know, when we were talking about certain gyms that we have here where you can get your nails done, your hair done, you can, you know, do your workout, you can shower, go into saunas and go into swimming pools, or play a pickup game of, you know, racquetball or basketball. I mean, you know, they didn't have a lot of facilities that were like that, because they said that they didn't know if that would, quote, work. And so just the fact that they wanted to spend time, you know, some of these people that really wanted to open up more clubs around Belgrade and surrounding areas of that region, I found sometimes we take these things for granted. And, you know, and again, at the end of the day, if you're going to the gym, you just need equipment, you need a room, you need trainers, you need people that have a system. I think, you know, we're now implementing that into Serbia, as well as a lot of the other, with some of our other international partners. But I just found it fascinating that sometimes I'm like, what do you mean you don't have this? Or what do you mean that type of gym's not available? So I think, just for me, it opened up my eyes to say, you know what? Not everyone has all the things available that we do, that sometimes we just literally take for granted. And so I think on an appreciation standpoint of what we have and the different gyms to choose from and those options. But I took a picture and actually showed Ken that right outside our hotel, there was this one area, there was one gym on the corner that had a few kettlebells, that had, I think, a leg press and a bar in it, like, a barbell rack. And that was it. Like, they had a clock that was just standing on the ground, and they had graffiti on the walls and everything like that. But it didn't even have lighting really in there. And so, but they're like, well, but this is a place where somebody, this person owns this gym. And so it just was like, I took a picture because I just was like, I was amazed, because I've never seen anything like that, even in very, rural areas. I've never seen anything like that. So the fact that they want to grow and they want to really take our culture in and embrace that and then make it their own. I couldn't say enough of just the questions and the passion. It was phenomenal.
Right. So just for clarification, there are gyms with health, with the amenities of treadmills. Oh, yes. And here's the thing, like within 3 miles of my house, there's 6 facilities that you can go to, right? Of varying levels of membership and amenities. So they are there, just for clarification. It's not as readily accessible, nearby. They might have to travel a little bit farther, which a lot of times for all of us, sometimes, to go that extra mile for something else might be worth it, depending on what you're looking for. But yeah, what you showed, Wendy, and that's what they said. It's like, it's not uncommon, right, that they're there, but it's not like what a lot of us have done over the last couple of years and basically curated your own home gym, right? You have your own set of dumbbells, the bench, which for a lot of garage gyms that I've seen out there and know that are out there, it would have been better than what Wendy had seen, as far as, okay, there was, no cardio. It was all dumbbells and barbells and a few kettlebells, and that was it, right? Which is more common than what we would see here for what would be charged for as a membership, right? Mm-hmm. You might as well just go to your neighbor's garage and work out there, because that was a little bit better. Size. Yeah, same size, right?
Oh, well, I just want to say, Ken, first of all, I was really excited when you're like, let's talk about Serbia, because I know like you said, we could talk about the food all day. We could talk about the unbelievable attendees and the relationships that we've made. Right. We could talk about, what an honor it was that NASM sent you and I out. They could have sent anyone. And so the fact that they chose us to go out to represent NASM and the brand and the model, I can't thank them enough. But again, hopefully we have Svetlana and Nabosa listening to this, because I want them to know that they did an exceptional job on this conference. They had, TV, national TV come in and interview Nabosa, talking about, just what this conference means to the Serbians, as well as everyone that attended. I mean, there was 48 sessions, 27 presenters, and just, the way that they handled the whole situation. If there was any kind of stresses or something that went bad on the back end, we were never made aware of it, because it really did seem to go better than most conferences, especially on the very first try. They did a phenomenal job, and we can't thank them enough.
Yeah, and as partners of the National Academy of Sports Medicine, they did great justice for representing their relationship with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And as you said, Wendy, it's just an honor to represent NASM at the conference, and all the information that, we're talking about 10 hours of information that was delivered over 2 days, which was, it's work when you're in it, but it doesn't feel like work. It's one of those things, right? Because you're enjoying it so much. The questions are so good, the interactions before and afterwards. just to know that people are interested and looking to see, not just, okay, well, can I get credits for this, which they don't have that over there, as far as continuing their certification, but it's just, how can I use this? How can I help more people? That was the energy and the vibe that I was getting from everybody out there. So,
and their certificates, they printed out these amazing little like certificate of completion, and people were standing there taking pictures, posting it all over social media that they had gone to this conference, and it was amazing. So Kenn, you did a phenomenal job as always. I always enjoy listening to you present. All the other presenters and speakers, I know we didn't list everyone out, but it was amazing to meet you. I think everyone was, talking about things they were extremely passionate about. Again, to our host, thank you, and hopefully we'll get invited back. And thanks for doing this with me today, Kenn.
Oh no, this was awesome. You and I, since coming back, we haven't really talked to each other and actually downloaded and compared notes. But this was a great summary of how we spent our time spreading the word of the optimum performance training model. So I'll just say, on behalf of myself and you, Wendy, our time was awesome, second to none when it came to our travels, really. But just being exposed to different cultures, different people, that's number one for us, as far as, how can we help people better understand what we have to teach, but also how to, apply it to your environment, to your clientele, because, if it works for one, it can work for many. And we're just honored and appreciative of the opportunity to do that. So Wendy, thank you so much for the time that we had to spend in this last trip to Serbia, to Belgrade. I can't have a better work partner than you. So I just wanted you to know that. So for those of you listening to us and actually heard us kind of just pour over Svetlana and Namosha and everybody with HFS in our time, thank you for listening to us on this episode of Random Fit. But as we say with every episode, like, follow, subscribe, comment, and let us know what else you'd want to hear us talk about on Random Fit. So until next time, take care and be well.